Admiral Zixathara's 8 eyes dilated in perfect synchronization as the holographic display flickered with incoming transmission data from across the Galactic Empire's outer rim territories. The massive command center aboard the Imperial Dreadnought, Eternal Dominion, hummed with the nervous energy of 1,000 different species, each monitoring their respective sectors of what had been, until 72 standard hours ago, the most stable galactic civilization in recorded history. Report, the Admiral's voice resonated through her translator, the mechanical undertones failing to mask the growing tremor of uncertainty that had plagued her since the first scattered reports began trickling in from the frontier worlds. Commander Vextel, a crystalline being whose body pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that betrayed his emotional state, approached the command throne with data tablets clutched in his multiple appendages. Admiral, the situation continues to deteriorate across 17 sectors. The Kefmarin Mining Consortium has completely abandoned their operations in the outer spiral. 3 entire trade routes have gone dark, and he paused, his light patterns shifting to deep amber. The Vorthan Defense Fleet has requested immediate reinforcements, claiming they're facing an unprecedented crisis. Zixathara's mandibles clicked in the rhythmic pattern that her species used to process complex information. The Vorthan were among the Empire's most reliable client species, their military prowess legendary across the galaxy. For them to request aid was almost unthinkable. Show me the tactical overview. The holographic display expanded, revealing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy's outer territories. Red indicators pulsed ominously across multiple star systems, each representing a colony, trading post, or military installation that had either gone silent or reported anomalous activities. But what made Zixathara's blood run cold was the pattern emerging from the chaos, a clear directional trend pointing toward the galactic core, toward the heart of the Empire itself. Admiral, another voice called out from the communications. Ray, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Hegemony Council. They're requesting an emergency session. The Hegemony Council had not convened an emergency session in over 3 centuries. Zixathara's mind raced through the implications as she processed the scope of whatever was happening in the Outer Rim. The Empire had faced rebellions before, pirate incursions, even the occasional rogue AI uprising, but nothing that had caused this level of systematic disruption across such a vast area of space. Patch me through to High Commander Kurthax on Nexus Prime, she ordered, her voice carrying the weight of growing dread. And get me detailed reports from every functioning outpost in the affected sectors. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with. As her crew scrambled to execute her orders, Zixathara found herself staring at the star charts, her analytical mind working overtime to piece together the puzzle. The affected areas formed an almost perfect sphere of influence, expanding outward from a point near the galactic rim where, according to Imperial records, there should have been nothing but empty space and a few insignificant systems containing primitive life forms. But primitive life forms didn't cause the collapse of interstellar trade networks. They didn't make the battle-hardened Vorthan Defense Fleet beg for reinforcements. And they certainly didn't force the Hegemony Council to break 3 centuries of routine. The calm system crackled to life, and High Commander Kurthax's imposing figure materialized in the holographic display. His species, the Draconari, were known throughout the galaxy for their military acumen and unshakable composure under pressure. But even through the distortion of the long-range transmission, Zixathara could see the stress fractures in his usually stoic demeanor. Admiral, Kurthax's voice carried an unusual urgency. I trust you've been monitoring the situation in the outer territories. The Hegemony Council has classified this as a Code Omega scenario. We're dealing with something unprecedented. Code Omega, the designation reserved for galaxy-threatening events. Zixathara felt her secondary hearts begin to race. Commander, what exactly are we facing? The reports are fragmented, contradictory. Some sectors report massive fleet movements. Others describe technological phenomena beyond our understanding. I need clarity. Kurthax's image flickered as he accessed his data banks. 3 days ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected what appeared to be a small fleet of unknown vessels emerging from hyperspace near the Terran system. Initially, We classified them as another primitive species attempting their first interstellar journey. Standard protocol would have been to make contact, assess their technological development, and either integrate them into the Empire as a client species or quarantine them until they reached appropriate development levels. But Zixathara prompted, sensing the weight of what was coming. But these weren't primitive vessels, Admiral. Our initial scans were incomplete. What we thought was a small exploration fleet was actually some kind of advanced reconnaissance force. Within hours of their arrival, they had somehow mapped our entire outer defense grid, identified every major installation within 100 light years, and began what can only be described as a systematic campaign of disruption. The word hung in the air like a curse. Zixathara's mind struggled to process the implications. Disruption? Commander, I need specifics. What kind of disruption could cause this level of chaos? They're not attacking in any conventional sense, Kurthax continued, his voice growing more strained. They're not using weapons, not destroying infrastructure. Instead, they're interfering with our operations in ways we've never encountered. Trade ships report their navigation systems failing when these vessels approach. Military installations find their defensive systems simply shutting down. It's as if they have some kind of technology that can override our most sophisticated systems. Without triggering our security protocols, Zixathara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the command center's environmental controls. You're describing technological superiority on a scale that shouldn't be possible. Our intelligence networks span the entire galaxy. We would have detected the development of such advanced capabilities. That's exactly the problem. Admiral, according to our historical records, the Terran system contains a species that only achieved nuclear capability within the last century. Of their development, they should be millennia away from interstellar travel, let alone possessing technology that can neutralize our defenses. The pieces of the puzzle began falling into place, but the picture they formed made no sense. A species that had been dismissed as primitive was somehow responsible for the greatest crisis the Galactic Empire had faced in recorded history, and if the reports were accurate, they were doing it without firing a single shot. Commander, Zixathara said slowly, are you telling me that this entire crisis is being caused by the humans? That's what our intelligence suggests, Admiral. But here's what's truly terrifying according to our latest deep space reconnaissance. What we're seeing isn't even their main fleet. The vessels causing all this chaos appear to be some kind of advanced scouting force. The humans haven't even committed their primary military assets to whatever operation they're conducting. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. If a mere reconnaissance force could bring the outer rim to its knees, what would happen when the human main fleet arrived? Zixathara stared at the tactical display, watching the red indicators spread like an infection across the star map. And for the first time in her distinguished military career, she felt something she had never experienced before, genuine fear of an unknown enemy. Admiral, Vextel's voice broke through her thoughts. We're receiving multiple priority transmissions from across the affected sectors. It appears the situation is accelerating. As Zixathara prepared to face whatever new revelations awaited, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything they thought they knew about the galaxy's balance of power was about to be proven catastrophically wrong. The humans were coming, and they had already demonstrated that the Empire's greatest strength, its technological superiority, might be nothing more than an illusion. When faced with truly advanced opposition, the question that haunted her was simple. If this was what the humans could accomplish with their scouts, what would they do when they decided to get serious? Section to the answer to Admiral Zixathara's question came sooner than anyone could have anticipated, delivered through the trembling voice of Communications Officer Kalanara, whose species' natural empathic abilities made her particularly sensitive to the emotional undercurrents of crisis situations. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission, Kalanara announced, her voice barely above a whisper. It's coming from the Terran system. They're requesting to speak with whoever's in charge of this galactic empire. The signal is being broadcast simultaneously to every major Imperial installation across 17 sectors. The audacity of the statement sent shock waves through the command center. No species had ever demanded an audience with Imperial leadership. The protocol had always been clear. New civilizations were contacted, evaluated, and either integrated or quarantined based on their potential value to the Empire. They didn't make demands. Put them through, Zixathara commanded, her voice steadier than she felt. Let's see what these humans have to say. The main holographic display shimmered and resolved into an image that immediately challenged every assumption the Empire had made about human civilization. The figure that appeared was unmistakably human bipedal. Bilateral symmetry, the typical mammalian characteristics their xenobiologists had catalogued. But there was something in the human's eyes, an intelligence and confidence that spoke of technological and strategic capabilities far beyond what their developmental assessments had suggested. The human appeared to be middle-aged by their species standards, with graying hair and wearing what seemed to be a simple civilian garment rather than any kind of military uniform. But it was the expression on his face that made Zixathara's blood run cold. The calm, almost amused smile of someone who held all the cards in a game their opponents didn't even know they were playing. Greetings, the human said, his voice carrying through the translation systems with an unsettling clarity. I am Dr. Marcus Chen, and I represent the Terran Diplomatic Corps. I believe we need to have a conversation about the future of this galaxy. The title caught Zixathara off guard. Not general, not admiral, not even president or emperor, but doctor. The humans had sent a civilian scientist to address the military might of the Galactic Empire. The implications were either insulting or terrifying, and Zixathara wasn't sure which interpretation was worse. Human, she responded, deliberately emphasizing the species designation rather than using his name. You will explain the meaning of your recent actions in Imperial space. Your vessels have been disrupting lawful commerce and causing widespread panic among our civilian populations. Dr. Chen's smile widened slightly, and he leaned back in what appeared to be a comfortable chair. Behind him, Zixathara could see what looked like a simple office space, but her enhanced visual scanners detected technological signatures that made no sense. According to their understanding of human development, you're referring to our initial reconnaissance phase, Chen said casually. I apologize for any inconvenience, but we needed to conduct a thorough assessment of your civilization's capabilities before initiating formal contact. You see, we've been watching your empire for quite some time, and we wanted to ensure we approach this situation with appropriate context. Watching us, Commander Vextel interjected, his bioluminescent patterns flashing with indignation. Impossible. Our sensor networks span the entire galaxy. We would have detected any surveillance operations. Chen's expression shifted to something almost resembling pity. Commander, with respect, your sensor networks are approximately 2,000 years behind our current technology. We've been conducting detailed observations of your empire for the past century, cataloging your military capabilities, analyzing your social structures, and monitoring your expansion patterns. We know more about your civilization than you know about yourselves. The statement hit the command center like a physical blow. Zixathara felt her confidence crumbling as she processed the implications. If the humans were telling the truth, then every strategic advantage the Empire believed it possessed was built on a foundation of ignorance. That's impossible, she said. But even as the words left her mouth, she began to doubt them. The systematic nature of the disruptions, the precise targeting of key installations, the seeming ability to neutralize Imperial technology without triggering defensive measures, it all pointed to a level of intelligence gathering that would require exactly the kind of long-term observation Chen was describing. Admiral, Chen continued, and the fact that he knew her rank despite no formal introduction sent another chill through her. Let me be direct. Your empire has been expanding through this galaxy for millennia, absorbing civilizations, exploiting resources, and maintaining order through superior technology and military force. It's been an effective strategy, but it's also created some problems. Problems? Zixathara asked, though she dreaded the answer. Your expansion has displaced over 47 distinct sapient species, caused the extinction of 12 unique cultural groups, and systematically stripped resources from thousands of worlds. More importantly, your empire's growth pattern is unsustainable. within the next centuries. You'll face resource shortages that will lead to internal conflict and eventual collapse. The clinical precision with which Chen delivered this analysis was almost more disturbing than the content itself. He wasn't making threats or expressing moral outrage, he was simply stating facts, as if he were discussing weather patterns. Even if your assessment is accurate, Zixathara said, struggling to maintain some semblance of authority, what concern is it of yours? The Terran system is barely a footnote in galactic affairs. Chen's smile returned, but this time it carried an edge that made Zixathara's instinct scream. Danger. Admiral, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding. We're not from the Terran system. We're not even from this galaxy. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Commander Vextel's bioluminescent patterns went completely dark, and several other officers audibly gasped. Zixathara felt her world tilting on its axis as she tried to process what she'd just heard. You're extragalactic, she managed to ask. The civilization you've been observing in the Terran system is indeed primitive by galactic standards, Chen explained. There are distant cousins, descendants of a colony ship that was launched from our home galaxy approximately 50,000 years ago. We've been monitoring their development and, by extension, watching your empire's growth patterns. The pieces began falling into place with terrifying clarity. An extragalactic civilization, with technology thousands of years ahead of anything the Empire possessed, had been watching and waiting. The humans in the Terran system weren't the threat, they were just the local representatives of something far more dangerous. Why now? Zixathara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why reveal yourselves now? Chen's expression grew serious. Because your empire has reached a critical juncture. Your expansion patterns indicate that within the next 50 years, you'll attempt to extend your influence beyond this galaxy. That cannot be allowed to happen. And if we refuse to comply with your suggestions? Zixathara asked, though she already suspected the answer. Admiral, I think you misunderstand the nature of this conversation. This isn't a negotiation or a demand for surrender. We're not here to conquer your empire or destroy your civilization. We're here to offer you a choice. The word choice hung in the air with ominous weight. Zixathara waited for the elaboration that would either offer hope or confirm her worst fears. You can work with us to restructure your empire into something sustainable and beneficial for all the species in this galaxy, Chen continued. Or you can continue on your current path and face the consequences when our main fleet arrives to enforce a solution. The threat was delivered with the same clinical precision as everything else, but its implications were crystal clear. The chaos spreading through the outer rim wasn't an invasion. It was a demonstration. The humans were showing the Empire exactly how helpless they were against truly advanced opposition. How long do we have? Zixathara asked, her military training overriding her shock as she focused on the practical implications. Our diplomatic vessel will remain in the Terran system for exactly 72 standard hours. Chen replied, during that time, we're prepared to discuss terms for a peaceful transition. After that deadline, the matter will be transferred to our military command, and I assure you, they are far less patient than our diplomatic corps. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Zixathara stared at the empty holographic display, her mind racing through the implications of what she'd just learned. The Empire wasn't facing a rebellion or an invasion, they were facing a judgment day, delivered by a civilization so advanced that their scouts alone could bring the galaxy to its knees. And somewhere in the vast emptiness of intergalactic space, a human fleet was waiting to see how the Empire would choose to face its future. Section 3. The Hegemony Council chambers on Nexus Prime had never witnessed such chaos. Representatives from over 100 species filled the vast amphitheater, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony that the universal translators struggled to process. Some species gestured wildly with multiple appendages. Others released pheromone clouds that conveyed complex emotional states, and a few simply stood in stunned silence, their neural patterns broadcasting disbelief across the chamber's psychic networks. Admiral Zixathara stood at the central podium, her report having just shattered the foundational assumptions that had governed galactic politics for millennia. High Counselor Murdoch, An ancient being whose species had been among the Empire's founding members raised one of his crystalline appendages for silence. Admiral Murdoch's voice resonated through the chamber's acoustic systems. You're asking us to believe that our entire civilization is at the mercy of beings we've never encountered, using technology we can't comprehend, from a galaxy we've never even detected. High Counselor, with respect, the evidence is overwhelming, Zixathara replied, activating the holographic display that showed the continuing spread of disruption across Imperial space. In the past 18 hours since Dr. Chen's transmission, the phenomenon has accelerated. Entire sectors are reporting complete technological failures. Our most advanced warships are being rendered helpless by vessels that appear to be operating on principles we don't understand. Counselor Vex Prime, representing the militant Draconari coalition, slammed his armored fist against his speaking platform. This is impossible. Our military technology is the result of 10,000 years of warfare and innovation. No species could have developed such superiority without our knowledge. Unless, interrupted Counselor Solara, her ethereal form shimmering with anxiety. They're not from our galaxy at all. The spatial distortion readings Admiral Zixathara has provided are consistent with technology that manipulates spacetime itself. If these humans have mastered intergalactic travel, then their technological development would have proceeded along entirely different paths than ours. The implications sent ripples of fear through the assembled representatives. The Empire's strength had always been based on its ability to absorb and adapt the best technologies from conquered civilizations. But if they were facing opponents who had developed in complete isolation, with access to different physical principles, their entire technological advantage might be meaningless. We need to consider the possibility, Counselor Murdoch said slowly, that Dr. Chen was telling the truth about their observations. If they've been watching us for a century, they would know our capabilities better than we know theirs. Then we must prepare for war. Vex Prime declared, his words triggering a wave of agreement from the military representatives. If they threaten our sovereignty, we respond with the full might of the Imperial fleet. We have faced extinction before and survived. Against whom? Zixathara asked, her question cutting through the militant rhetoric. We don't even know where they are. Our deep space sensors can't detect their vessels until they're already affecting our systems. How do you wage war against an enemy you can't see, using weapons that don't seem to work against their technology? The chamber fell silent as the reality of their situation sank in. For the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Empire faced an opponent that seemed to possess every possible advantage. There is another consideration, Counselor Thexan spoke up, his insectoid form clicking with nervous energy. Dr. Chen mentioned that their reconnaissance was conducted to assess our civilization's impact on the galaxy. What if their intentions aren't conquest but correction? Vex Prime's voice carried dangerous undertones. You suggest we submit to alien judgment. I suggest we consider the possibility that our expansion has created problems we're not aware of. Vexan replied, the humans mentioned displaced species, resource depletion, cultural extinction. What if they're not wrong? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The Empire's expansion had indeed displaced numerous species, but it had always been justified as the natural order of civilization, the strong guiding the weak toward greater prosperity. The idea that this might be viewed as a moral failing by a superior civilization was deeply unsettling. We need information, Murdoch declared. Admiral, I want you to return to the Terran system with a full diplomatic escort. We need to understand what we're really dealing with. High Counselor, Zixathara said carefully. I should inform you that the situation has evolved since my initial report. We've detected unusual activity in the Terran system. The main display shifted to show long-range sensor data from the human home system. What they saw defied every principle of space-based civilization they thought they understood. The star system wasn't just inhabited, it was completely integrated. Massive structures surrounded the star itself, presumably harvesting its energy directly. The planets weren't just colonized. They appeared to have been partially disassembled and reconstructed into optimal configurations. They're not just advanced, Zixathara continued, her voice filled with awe and terror. They've achieved complete mastery over stellar engineering. They're treating an entire star system like we would treat a space station. How is that possible? Solara whispered, her form flickering with shock. The energy requirements alone would be beyond our comprehension. That's not the most disturbing part, Zixathara said, highlighting specific sensor readings. Our analysis suggests that what we're seeing isn't their primary civilization. The structures appear to be administrative, as if this entire stellar engineering project is just a minor outpost. The revelation hit the Council like a physical blow. If the Terran system, with its star-spanning megastructures and reality-defying technology, was just an administrative outpost, then the true scope of human civilization was beyond their ability to comprehend. Admiral, Murdoch's voice had taken on a hollow quality. In your professional opinion, what would be the outcome of a military confrontation with these humans? Zixathara looked round the chamber at the representatives of the greatest military power the galaxy had ever seen, species that had conquered star systems, that had faced down cosmic horrors, that had built an empire spanning millions of worlds. And she realized that for the first time in her career, she had to deliver the unthinkable. High Counselor, based on what we've observed, I believe a military confrontation would result in the complete destruction of Imperial forces, without the humans suffering any meaningful casualties. They appear to possess technology that can disable our weapons before we can even target them effectively. Then what do you recommend? Vex Prime asked, his militaristic bravado finally cracking. We need to seriously consider their offer, Zixathara said. They've given us 72 hours to respond to their diplomatic overture. We have approximately 36 hours remaining. If we reject their terms, we face the arrival of their main fleet, and based on what we've seen from their reconnaissance forces, I don't believe our civilization would survive that encounter. The chamber erupted into chaos as representatives began arguing among themselves. Some called for immediate surrender, others demanded a fight to the death, and a few suggested attempting to flee beyond the galaxy's borders. But through it all, Zixathara couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. High Counselor, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. I request permission to return to the Terran system immediately, not for military purposes, but to genuinely engage with Dr. Chen's offer. We need to understand what kind of future they're proposing, and if it's a trap, Vex Prime demanded, then we'll face the same destruction we're facing now. But at least we'll have tried to find an alternative, Zixathara replied. The humans have demonstrated that they can destroy us whenever they choose. If they wanted us dead, we'd already be dead. That suggests they genuinely want to find a peaceful solution. Murdoch's crystalline form pulsed with deep thought. Very well, Admiral. Take your fastest ship and return to the Terran system. But understand you're not just representing the Empire. You're potentially negotiating for the survival of our entire civilization. As Zixathara prepared to leave the chamber, she caught sight of the holographic display still showing the impossible structures surrounding the human star. Somewhere in that system, Dr. Chen was waiting for her response, and beyond that, in the vast emptiness between galaxies, a human fleet was prepared to enforce whatever judgment they had reached about the Empire's future. The question that haunted her now was whether the Empire could change quickly enough to survive its first encounter with a truly superior civilization, or whether they were about to discover that even galactic empires could become extinct when faced with the right predator. Section for Admiral Zixathara's flagship, the Diplomatic Resolve, emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Terran system with a precision that their navigation computers claimed was impossible. The stellar engineering marvels that had been visible on long-range sensors were now revealed in their full, terrifying glory. The star itself was encased in a network of energy collection matrices that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions. Simultaneously, the planets had been transformed into geometric perfection, their surfaces covered with structures that pulsed with contained energy signatures that made her ship's sensors overflow with warnings. But it was what waited for them in the outer system that truly drove home the magnitude of their situation. A single vessel, no larger than a civilian transport, hung motionless in space. As the Diplomatic Resolve approached, Zixathara as tactical. Officers reported readings that defied every principle of physics they understood. Admiral. Commander Vextel's voice carried a tremor of awe. The energy signature from that vessel is impossible. According to our instruments, it's generating more power than our entire fleet combined, but it's doing so without any detectable power source. Life signs? Zixathara asked, though she suspected the answer would be equally incomprehensible. Negative. Admiral, but that doesn't mean it's unmanned. Our sensors are detecting quantum signatures that suggest the vessel exists in multiple dimensional states. Simultaneously, it's possible that the occupants exist in a phase state we can't perceive. Before Zixathara could respond, her communications ray activated without any input from her crew. Dr. Chen's familiar figure appeared on the holographic display, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood several other humans, each wearing the same simple civilian clothing that somehow managed to convey an aura of absolute competence. Admiral Zixathara, Chen said, his voice carrying the same calm authority she remembered. Welcome to the Terran system. I trust your journey was illuminating, Dr. Chen. Zixathara replied, forcing her voice to remain steady. I've come to discuss your proposal for the future of our galaxy. Excellent. Please, dock with our vessel. We have much to discuss, and very little time remaining. The docking procedure was unlike anything Zixathara had ever experienced. Instead of the usual mechanical coupling systems, her ship seemed to simply merge with the human vessel through some kind of spatial manipulation. One moment they were separate craft, the next they were connected by what appeared to be a corridor of twisted spacetime. As Zixathara and her small diplomatic team made their way through the connecting passage, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking through more than just space. The corridors seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and she caught glimpses of what might have been other versions of reality, flickering at the edges of her vision. The interior of the human vessel was a study in elegant simplicity. The walls appeared to be made of some kind of living metal that responded to the presence of the visitors, adjusting lighting and atmospheric conditions to optimal levels for each species present. There were no visible control systems, no instrument panels, no indication of how the vessel was operated. It was as if the ship itself was a living entity. Dr. Chen and his colleagues waited in what appeared to be a meeting room, though the space seemed to adjust its dimensions based on the number of occupants. As Zixathara and her team took their seats, she noticed that the furniture had somehow configured itself to accommodate the physical requirements of each species present. Before we begin, Chen said, I want to address the elephant in the room. As my species would say, you're wondering how we've achieved such technological advancement, and whether our intentions are genuinely peaceful. The thought had occurred to me, Zixathara replied dryly. Chen smiled and gestured to one of his companions, a woman with silver hair and eyes that seemed to hold the depth of stars. This is Dr. Sarah Okafor, our chief temporal engineer. Sarah, would you explain our development path? Dr. Okafor leaned forward, her expression serious. Admiral, your species measures technological advancement in terms of energy manipulation and material science. Those are important, but they're not the only paths to advancement. We discovered something your civilization missed, that consciousness itself is a fundamental force of the universe, capable of manipulating reality at the quantum level. You're describing psionics, Zixathara said, though she knew that the Empire's understanding of psychic phenomena was rudimentary at best. Not psionics as you understand them, Okafor replied. We're talking about the conscious manipulation of the quantum substrate that underlies all reality. When your species developed technology, you focused on building tools to manipulate the physical world. We learned to manipulate the foundations of reality itself. The implications were staggering. If humans could alter reality through conscious will, then their technological capabilities weren't bound by the same limitations that constrained other species. They could achieve effects that appeared impossible because they were operating on a completely different level of existence. This is why your weapons don't work against us, Chen continued. We don't block or deflect your attacks. We simply adjust the local reality so that the attack never occurred in the first place. That's Zixathara struggled to find words. That's godlike power. No, Chen said firmly. Gods, if they exist, would presumably be outside the universe entirely. We're still bound by the fundamental laws of reality. We've just learned to work with them more directly than most species. Dr. Okafor activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy from a perspective Zixathara had never seen before. Instead of the familiar arrangement of stars and planets, the display revealed underlying patterns of energy and information that connected every system in complex, living networks. This is what we see when we look at your galaxy, Okafor explained. It's not just a collection of stars and planets, it's a living system, with its own patterns of growth and development. Your empire's expansion has been disrupting these patterns, causing damage that extends far beyond the immediate effects you're aware of. You're saying our expansion is damaging the galaxy itself? Zixathara asked, though the evidence was becoming increasingly clear. Not intentionally, Chen said. Your species didn't know about these deeper patterns. But yes, the disruption is significant. If it continues, it will eventually lead to a cascade failure that could affect the entire galactic ecosystem. And this is why you've intervened. Partially. But there's more. Chen's expression grew serious. Admiral, how much do you know about the space between galaxies? It's empty, Zixathara said, though she was beginning to suspect that assumption might be wrong. It's not empty, Chen replied. It's full of things your species can't perceive, entities that exist in the quantum foam between realities. Most of them are benign, but some aren't. Your empire's expansion pattern is generating quantum disturbances that are attracting attention from things that your galaxy is not prepared to face. The holographic display shifted to show the space between galaxies, and Zixathara gasped. The seemingly empty void was actually teeming with structures and movements that existed in dimensions her eyes couldn't properly process. Some of them were beautiful in their alien complexity, but others radiated a malevolence that made her instincts scream in terror. We're not just trying to save your civilization, Chen continued. We're trying to save this entire galaxy from attracting the attention of beings that make our technological capabilities look primitive by comparison. You're saying there are things out there that are more advanced than you, much more advanced, and much less interested in peaceful coexistence. The quantum disturbances your empire is generating are like a beacon to them. If they decide to investigate, your galaxy will face extinction on a scale that makes our intervention look like a minor inconvenience. Zixathara felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on her shoulders. The Empire wasn't just facing a choice between submission and destruction. They were facing a choice between transformation and the potential annihilation of everything they had ever known. What do you propose? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Chen leaned back in his chair, his expression softening. We propose a partnership. Your empire has something we need: detailed knowledge of this galaxy's species and civilizations. We have something you need: the ability to guide your development toward sustainability without attracting unwanted attention from extragalactic entities. You want to merge our civilizations, not merge, evolve. We want to help your species develop the same consciousness-based technologies we use. It will take time, perhaps centuries, but the end result will be a galactic civilization that can defend itself against threats you can't even imagine yet. The offer was more generous than Zixathara had dared hope for. Instead of conquest or destruction, the humans were offering partnership and transformation. But she knew that such fundamental changes would face enormous resistance from the Empire's established power structures. The Hegemony Council will never agree to this, she said. Too many species have invested too much in the current system, Admiral, Chen said gently. I need to show you something else. The holographic display shifted again, showing real-time images from across the galaxy. Zixathara watched in horror as the disruptions they had attributed to human scout vessels revealed their true nature. The phenomena weren't attacks, they were transformations. Systems that had been affected by the human presence were showing signs of unprecedented cooperation between species that had been enemies for millennia. This is what's really been happening, Chen explained. Our reconnaissance wasn't just gathering intelligence. It was subtly adjusting the quantum substrates that influence consciousness and behavior. We've been removing the artificial barriers between species that have been maintained. By your empire's divide and conquer strategies, you've been manipulating our minds, not manipulating, liberating. Your species naturally tend toward cooperation and mutual benefit. It's the artificial structures of empire that force them into competition and conflict. We've simply been removing those artificial constraints. Zixathara watched as the display showed species after species choosing cooperation over conflict, trade over exploitation, understanding over fear. The chaos she had interpreted as civilizational collapse was actually the birth of something new. A galactic community based on genuine mutual benefit rather than imposed order. The choice is still yours, Chen said. You can return to the Hegemony Council and recommend resistance. Our main fleet will arrive, and we'll enforce the transformation whether your leadership agrees or not. Or you can recommend cooperation, and we'll work together to guide this process in a way that preserves the best aspects of your civilization while eliminating the destructive elements. And if we choose cooperation, then you'll be among the first to learn what your species is truly capable of when freed from the limitations of purely technological development. Your descendants will walk between stars the way you walk between rooms, and they'll help us protect this galaxy from threats that exist beyond the boundaries of normal space. Zixathara looked around the room at her diplomatic team, seeing the same mixture of fear and wonder in their eyes that she felt in her own hearts. They were being offered a chance to transcend everything they had ever known, to become something greater than they had ever imagined possible. But they were also being asked to trust beings whose power was so far beyond their comprehension that resistance would be futile. The irony wasn't lost on her. They were facing the same choice they had given to hundreds of species over the millennia. The difference was that this time, the offer came with genuine respect for their autonomy and a promise of transformation, rather than subjugation. I'll need to return to the Hegemony Council, she said finally. But Dr. Chen, I want you to know that I personally believe cooperation is our only viable path forward. I understand, Admiral, but I should warn you we've detected movement in the intergalactic void. Our main fleet is already en route, and they'll arrive in approximately 6 hours. The Council's decision will need to be made very quickly. As Zixathara prepared to return to her ship, she realized that she was about to participate in the most important decision in galactic history. The Empire would choose to evolve or face extinction, and either way, the galaxy would never be the same. The age of the Galactic Empire was ending. What would replace it remained to be seen. But as she looked back at the impossible structures surrounding the human star, she couldn't help but feel that perhaps, for the first time in millennia, the galaxy might be about to experience something it had almost forgotten: hope for a future better than its past.